Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy Footsdaking. As always, thank you guys for liking, sharing, subscribing. This video is brought to you guys by BetUS. BetUS, all your betting needs. NBA basketball. You can bet on futures, the NFL draft. Who's going to be the first pick? Who's going to be the Cowboys pick? BetUS has all of it. Joining me today, the GOAT, Bryan Broaddus. We are going to speak on a few things, Cowboys primer for the combine. And I actually want to jump right in, and I want to ask Broaddus, being a former scout, Super Bowl winning scout, got to put that in front of it.
Thank you.
Bryan, around this time of year, you have your stack, but you're getting ready for the combine. Do you go back and say, I got to redo some things after the combine?
Yeah, and it's great to be with you again, Foot. So I love
you,
working with you. You know that. This time of year, and listen, the last time I sat in a war room was in 2005. A lot has changed. A lot is different. The analytics and all the things, and even the way that scouts scout. There was a time where scouts were, out there. They were making decisions. They were building boards and stuff. Those are the things that the Cowboys do. There's some teams that don't feel that way. They have scouts that are information gatherers, and then they have a general manager, director of player personnel. And those are the guys, the ones that kind of set the board. But from my experience of working, and especially now with the Cowboys of having to deal with a coaching change, there's some players that these scouts probably didn't think were for them because of maybe height, weight, speed, things like that, measurables. There's things that the Mike McCarthy administration was interested in certain types of players, and the scouts for 5 years had an understanding of that. So now with a completely different scouting staff, and actually some coaches that are from the college ranks, they really they're going to have to learn the scouts, and the scouts are going to have to learn them. But this is the time of year where, like you say, you've been out there, you've got your list of guys you've studied, you've had the cross-check guys. The Cowboys do things where they have certain scouts scout certain positions, so they're working on those. But right now, and in my experience when I was with Green Bay and with the Packers, we would work on the draft. We would start the Tuesday after the Super Bowl, and we would start in on building our board. And what we would do is we would do like the offense and defensive lines, the big guys, we would do them first because by the time we got to the combine, we then had speeds for the skilled guys. So you kind of had to understand like the big guys you really don't need to know. Nowadays that's changed with these edge rushers and stuff like that. We're really focused on some of these numbers for certain positions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Cowboys right now, if Brian Schottenheimer is smart, and I think he's smart, he'll do exactly what Bill Parcells did with us when Bill Parcells came in. Bill sat back and observed, and that was the Terrence Newman draft where he sat back and said, "Listen, I don't know you guys as scouts. Let me tell you, Bill didn't kind of try and come in and hammer us right off the jump. He sat back, he kept the coaches out of the room, and he let the scouts put together the board. And Bill learned along the way, and that was cool. I think Brian Schottenheimer would be very smart to do the same thing. Keep the coaches out of the room, let them work on putting together playbooks, game planning stuff, practice schedules, all that stuff for OTAs, mini camps, things coming up. Kind of get together, get to know each other, sit down, kind of watch the games, watch the tape, kind of have an understanding what type of players you're working with. So that's where if I was Brian Schottenheimer, I would be the point man for the coaching staff with the scouts and Will McClay. And I would say, okay, here we go. Let's walk me through what we're about to do here. Because if you get new coaches involved and they really don't know, and like I say, there's some coaches on that staff that are college guys. And it's so they're going to have to come up to speed of who's playing in the league and how they're playing and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on here for everybody involved. But for the scouting part of it is you want to have your players ready. You want to have your cross-check position players ready.
The cross-check, medical.
Exactly. And then when you get to the combine, then it's about interviews and it's about medicals. Those are really the two most important things because the workouts, if a kid works out and he works out well, great. That's fine. You can check that box off. You're still going to go to Boulder, Colorado. You're still going to go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You're still going to go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. When
Yeah.
these guys work out, you're still going to watch workouts. Now, this is going to be really an unusual time because of what we saw last year, Foots, with Caleb Williams.
Yes.
There could be some players in this draft at the top of that board that never work out. They say, listen, and let's be honest, our kid at Colorado, Hunter, he's got, like, listen, won the Heisman Trophy. I've, the tape's there. You've seen me play. I'm not working out. I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. And there's some thought about, I was talking with some scouts that maybe Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, who maybe might be a little speed deficient,
Isn't going to run.
Might not be a guy, maybe not the combine, but maybe not in Ann Arbor, or maybe not even his hometown. He might not ever run a 40-yard dash because but what we saw with Caleb Williams, what we saw with Marvin Harrison, like, listen, you've seen my tape.
You know me.
You know me. You don't need for me to run a 40-yard dash for you to make a decision on me. We're going to see that a lot more from players, I think, going forward. And that's what's going to make it. That's what's so different about today combine as to when I was going to the combine, in the 90s.
Yeah, players kind of knowing their worth and, this is who I am. And, and at the quarterback position, we talk about Colorado. Obviously, we're not looking for a quarterback high, but, you talk about Colorado, a guy who's flying up boards is Louisville's Tyler Shuck. But then with Shedeur, I want to see, does he go out and compete with Shuck? He's on Twitter. Hey, I'm competing. I'm there to compete. And, so that'll be interesting. Brian, I want to ask you this before we get into a few players that I want to pick your brain on that I have thoughts on, but I want to pick your brain. Brian, how are these guys how are they assessing their needs? Because it's interesting. We hired within. So Schottenheimer was in this building. He knows the needs, but then we still haven't went through free agency. So, because I'm thinking, right, Brian, I'm thinking to myself, the Cowboys don't normally pick this high. Normally picking 24, right. CD was what, 18, 17, wherever he was 17, drafted, 17. Yeah. And you think about even traded back for Guyton. Mozzie was a later round pick. You're at 12. You're right at the cusp of the last true first round guys. Yeah. So how are in this building, do you think, how are they assessing their needs to where it's like, hey, we need maybe running back, but can we let Shamar Stewart pass, or can we let Will Johnson pass? How do you think they're assessing that part of it?
Yeah, I think there's some players. I think that even Walter Nolan from Mississippi, who Daniel Jeremiah mocked in his second mock draft to the Cowboys. His first mock draft, he took Ashton Genty. And then, so I did some back channeling work to get to Daniel Jeremiah and kind of found out that he, I found out that, like, listen, I go, that's an unusual, it's an unusual pick for the Cowboys with so many others on the board with Ted McMillan, the receivers, and others on that board. And he said basically that, listen, I thought it was a really good fit for the Cowboys. If you lose Oso Digizua, then, you're going to need a 3 technique. And, there's a lot of really positive things about Walter Nolan, and there's some things you have to be absolutely concerned about. But you're right. You're right on the cusp of really the first round grades and where these things are going to fall. Sometimes it's between 18 and 22 names of first round grades. This is a really an unusual draft in that way, because you're probably looking at 13 first round grades. And so now, the guys like the Walter Nolans, they're probably going to fall in that range of, 16, 17, 18 for folks. And so, yeah, I think it's one of those things. Football is so unusual because it usually, all other sports have free agency and then they have a draft. Whereas where football is the opposite that way. So yeah, I think I think they realize that everything that we are talking about in the media as far as needs, we all watch this team play pretty extensively. I remember when I was in Philadelphia in '98, did a press conference pre-draft, and I told the fan base, I go, listen, there's no secret what we need. You watch us play every week. You see the deficiencies that we have as a team. And so there's no secrets here. And, the Cowboys are on the verge, too, of potentially losing more players like they lost last year.
Yes.
They're losing more depth. And so all of a sudden now, uh, what I learned from watching Philadelphia win the Super Bowl is you have to be able to sign free agents, you have to be able to draft, and you have to be able to, you have to be able to navigate trades and other things to make your team better. If you just do one of the three, you're probably not going to have success. If you do two of the three, you're going the right direction. You do three of the three, they're handing you the Lombardi Trophy, is what they're doing. So you have to be able to navigate all that. You can't just be one dimensional. We talk about players that are just one dimensional, one trick ponies. Dallas right now very much a draft and try and develop, and then where they've had problems is re-signing their own. And when they do the re-signs, that those players play at a level that they think they can play. So you got to be able to evaluate your own team. That's something I learned from Mike Lombardi a long time ago. If you misevaluate your team, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
But Dallas is in a situation right now where they have you could look at all the positions for Dallas.
Everyone.
Every one of them. You could look at every
Yeah.
one of them and say, okay, that pick at 12 would make sense. Take a corner at 12. Yeah. I mean, listen, we were talking about it on Love of the Star the other day, myself and Eric Chiafalo.
Great listen. I caught it. I caught that. That was a really good
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at, and that's kind of where, Eric's like, listen, I don't think we're talking about quarterback enough. And I'm like, you're right. If Diggs goes through and has the type of rehab that he had last year, this is going to be a problem again. This is going to be, he needs to be on top of that. And, this is a new administration too. Al Harris, I'm sure that Al was, involved in probably telling the medical guys, hey, well, he's going to do this, he's going to do this, he's going to do this. But the medical guys are probably going, well, no, he needs to do this, and he needs to do this, and he needs to do it now. And so, yeah, I mean, that's where things kind of get a little crossed. And so, I'm any corner, edge.
We about
tackle. I mean, yeah. You could get into a lot of positions with this football team.
Now, Bryan, I'm so glad that you perfect segue. I actually caught that full episode from top to bottom, and I thought it was really good. Also, you and your work with my brother Vosh, man, doing all right is amazing. Yeah. Everywhere you are, Bryan, is crazy. Hardest worker. Bryan, I wanted to ask you this, and now I want the gloves off. I don't want political Bryan. Gloves off. You guys had a great segment on Jalon Walker, and me and Vosh, I primed him on Walker. Probably 2 days before that segment on the draft, I said, listen, this guy is going to be, if nothing else, he's going to be they're going to talk about him. He is the type of player that body beautiful, can move. But then now, Bryan, I'm reading and I'm hearing this Jihaad Campbell love, and I watched the tape in passing, but I'm like, okay, I see a guy who plays good off ball, not great. But the traits I'm hearing, and I'm now read that he's going to clock a 4.4. Tell me where you stand with both of those guys, because I'll be honest, defensively, everybody weapons, and I'm weapons. I'm running back. I'm Genty. But we got to think now. You don't have Overshown for the first half of the year.
Yeah.
You don't have. You have Marisol Foul, and that's it. Team pretty much gave up on. Jamal Clark. They gave up on Clark.
Sure.
Where are you at on those two athletes, Bryan?
Yeah, and I think, and I love working with Vosh, and I respect the hell out of him for his passion. The view. There's been times this year where he set me right. Where I go back and I think, there's blind spots we all have, and Vosh is really we're good at playing off each other that way, and I really do like Walker a lot. I think he can be. We talk about Micah Parsons, off-ball linebackers. Micah Parsons really a good linebacker.
Not off ball.
No, not off ball. He's, he might be a little bit better in coverage than Walker. I mean, Vosh thinks that Walker can't cover. I disagree with that.
Same.
But the thing about it is, though, to me, Walker, Campbell. I this today I was looking through, and Vach and I were we do our show every night, and I'm like, man, bro, we got to do some of these linebackers. We got to see if there's anybody, because as we're following these lists, whether it's Pro Football Focus, whether it's Dane Brugler, these lists, that's what you're just trying to work off of. I mean, when I was in scouting, you had a list that was given to you by school, and okay, these are all the guys, and so you knew who you were looking at. And right now, we're really playing off lists that people are making, and what we're finding is that, and I'll get back to it, but what I'm finding is that we're seeing players that weren't talked about initially on these lists that are now better players than the players that were on the list. And so it happens every year. The media scouts, they kind of fall, they put out a list, it then gets adjusted, and now you're playing catch up to try and I told Vach, I go, we got to start looking at linebackers. And he agreed. And so, the next couple of weeks, we've got, and then I know this week for, our homework assignment, we like to call it, we're looking at those linebackers. But to the point, Walker, Campbell, those are like the top guys. I mean, trust me, I would love either one of those players. I just, they're just perfect. They're perfect fits for what you're trying to do. And, and
with Eberflus as well, who had Edmonds. Oh my God.
Yeah. See, I mean, Campbell, 6'3", he's 245. He's versatile. He has instincts. He's tough. He lines up all over the place. He can set edges. He's got some pop. I mean, he can force the run. I mean, there's, he had an interception in the Georgia game. He knows where he needs to fit. He knows how to read quarterbacks. Yeah. If you told me I could have Campbell or Walker, and I think that Walker has more of an element to his game of the pass rushing. I think that's what makes Walker different than Campbell, is the fact that Campbell is more of a linebacker. I think that you look at, now, I had a scout buddy of mine tell me this when, and I asked about Walker. I said, where do you play Walker? How do you have this? And this is a scout friend of mine from another team that does the SEC and went to Georgia. And he's like, listen, a lot of people think Walker's an end. I think he's kind of an inside linebacker. I think he's a guy that you put his hand down occasionally and you let him rush when it's the situation is right to do so. Now, that's going to be a lot of the time. But my friend also said, listen, I worry about him getting beat up if he was a full-time end. I worry about that.
He's so right.
So, but I'm like, okay, that makes sense, the weight and all that. You can watch, and Vach always laughs at me. He goes, okay, Bryan, take away the Texas game and you got nothing there, right?
I love the Kentucky tape.
Yeah, well, that's what Vach is. He's joking with me, is what he's
doing.
Yeah. Take away the Texas game and you got, but I see a guy. I mean, I see a force. I see a tackler. I see a rusher. I see very much similar to what you get with like Micah Parsons. And Micah is not a great linebacker. Micah Parsons is about to make $35 million a year because he knows how to rush the passer. That's how Micah Parsons. That's why Micah Parsons is going to do what he is. But Walker, Campbell, either one of those guys would be a huge upgrade for the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion.
I think people have to also remember you're drafting a guy in Walker who comes from a school where these Georgia players are coming into the league, not just at linebacker, Bryan. Yeah. They're coming into the league and playing good football. Yeah. Like Georgia athletes, you talk about the other side of the ball, Bowers. You talk about the slot that he killed it in LA this year with the Chargers. These guys are playing good football. And another thing is Georgia defenders, Bryan, they rotate. So Michael Williams, you look at his snaps, you look at Walker's snaps, and then you go look at James Pierce's snaps, and then you go look at, maybe Mike Green's snaps. His snaps are way higher than everybody will look sacks. I'm going to tell you something about Mike Green. This might be a hot take. I sat and watched every rep of his at the Senior Bowl, Bryan.
Sure.
I'm going to tell you, year one, he's gonna struggle versus the run. Just get ready. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you, when they're doing their inside run period and they're doing fit drill. And yes, the
Mhm.
highlight rep where he runs through Connolly. Cool.
Mhm.
Love it. But
Yeah.
then, hey man, you have to actually set this edge. They're running
Yeah.
outside zone and you can't get reached. Can you
Yeah.
do that rep in and rep out? Kind of scares me. With me, Bryan, when I watch these edges, I'm trying to find the next Jared Verse. I'm not trying to find the
Oh no,
next,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
because some of these guys play strength, right? You talk about,
Yeah.
I love Latu, loved him.
Yeah.
You talk about Dallas Turner, loved him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
everybody forgot about Jared Verse. He
Yeah.
comes in year one and he gives Lane
Oh
Johnson
no.
hell, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I knew I get to see Jared Verse live when I was in Oxnard when the Cowboys were training against, and
I mean,
and
giving
that's
guiding fits.
and well, he was giving everybody fits. It didn't matter who he was. It didn't matter who he was going against, and I I kind of feel like that. I feel like that Mike Green, and I know the games that I watched to him, I felt like he could stack blockers. And
Okay.
and I, and again, I'm not, hey, listen, you do the work, I do the work. I mean, I totally respect everything. The people out there that do the work, I mean, I can like disagree with your opinion. I'm just gonna say, you know, I think his number one trait is his ability to rush the passer. There's no question about that. But he does have to be careful, and I think this is what you see, and I agree with you on this. I think that he has to be careful that how aggressive he plays, he will take himself out of place. I
Yeah.
think he will take himself when the ball comes his direction. He has to be careful because he will try and maybe jump the play, or he'll maybe try and go wide and then come back. But yeah, I can absolutely, I can see, one of the things that I said in my notes, and I'm reading it right now, might have some trouble with the ball right at him early in his NFL career until he develops more strength. I think there needs to be a little more strength. Uh, he kind of reminded me of the David Jobo. Remember him
Yeah.
from the Michigan that played
Yeah.
with the Ravens? Kind of that kind of a player. But I don't, I totally understand what you're saying. But to me, the pass rush and all, he is the one guy. It's kind of strange though as you watch this process.
Hmm.
He's the one guy that has kind of been on the mock drafts where all of a sudden he was down, Cowboys, he was past, like he was maybe 18, 19, somewhere right around there. And then he's got into, oh, wait, top 12. Oh, now he's into the top nine. Oh, wait, he's in the top five,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So he's kind of steadily gone up the board when it's as a player. But I don't think you're wrong about the ball at him. Again, I typed that in my notes as well.
That's good stuff, Bryan. Bryan, I got one more for you, man. I'll let you go. I appreciate your time.
Sure.
Now I wanted to ask you this, and again, combine coming up, so that was kind of like a primer because those are two
Yeah.
polarizing guys who I'm hearing if they run if Campbell and if Jihaad Campbell and Walker run 4-4 sub 4-4s, Bryan, you're having a conversation. You just
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
There's no way that you say I can't put these guys on this defense and figure it out. Even if I have to pass on the runner, who I love the runner, would
Yeah.
want the runner, but I mean that's just with the offenses that you have to deal with. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you
No.
this, Bryan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You had a point.
No. 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 I'm totally with you on that.
Okay, I want to ask you this, Mr. Broaddus. So when we talk about players that could possibly now fall,
Yeah.
that same mock that you're talking about, and you did a deep dive and you spoke with Jeremiah. I want to ask you about Tedero and McMillan,
Sure.
and he fell all the way to 19 in that mock draft.
Yeah. It was wild, wasn't it? Yeah.
Do you see that as being realistic, Bryan?
You know what? It's funny that you say that because I was talking with Dane Brugler about the same thing. And I asked Dane, I said, hey, did you see Daniel Jeremiah's mock? And he said, yeah, I did. And I said, McMillan getting to 19. And he says, yeah. And what people are probably going to question is how fast is Ted McMillan? How fast does he run? There's a couple of speed. There's a couple of speed dependent positions that always get drafted: wide receiver and cornerback, because there's questions about Will Johnson. and we brought it up earlier when you and I started talking. Will Johnson might not even run because he knows now the jumps, all that other stuff's going to be fine. The speed could not be what teams really like, and so that might drop him down. I think he was a guy that started very high on people's list, top three guy, and now he's you got Barron from Texas going ahead of him in a couple of mocks. You got people. I think what's happening is that people are starting to the scouts are saying, hey, listen, you better watch Johnson's speed, and I think the same could be said about with McMillan. McMillan has always been. There's going to be another guy, Graham, from Mason Graham from Michigan. Is
Ooh,
going to be a.
talk to me about that, Bryan.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. There's Dane and I were going through Mason Graham's background and what we think, and Dane was like saying, listen, Mason Graham is going to work out fine at the combine, but people are going to. He's not a physically. He's not. His body doesn't look great. He's a
Not body
short arm
beautiful,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah, he's going to. But if you watch the tape, he's a top 7 player. But there are people, there are teams that will say, well, he doesn't fit this metric, and he doesn't fit this metric, and he doesn't fit this metric, and they'll probably drive him down because there was opportunities where he was down where Dallas could potentially take him at 12. So those to me, there's a couple of them like that. Ted McMillan, Mason Graham, those are guys that if all of a sudden they're sitting there at 12, as much as I love Genty, and they fit, everything fits. Now,
They fit.
And you did a great job the other day. You and Zach Wolchuk had a really good show the other day, Zach brought up the fact he's like, Bryan, I don't see these running backs. I don't see these running backs at the second round potentially being there for Dallas. And
No.
he said it. And then you look at a Daniel Jeremiah draft. Genty goes at 21. Hampton goes like at 23. Everybody went but Johnson. They're all gone. Henderson was gone at 20. All of a sudden you're sitting there thinking, okay, I lose my top 4 running backs before I even get to 44. And so now, how comfortable do you feel taking, somebody that might have a 3rd round grade for you at 44? That's something.
Oh yeah, draft him early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you pass on Genty, and it can very well happen.
It can
You
happen.
know what? It can happen. But if it's Ted McMillan, if it's Graham, if it's one of those guys that you have in that top 5, you got Hunter, Carter, Genty, Graham, McMillan. I mean, if there are guys up there that if you take one of those guys, you're going to go like, man, I feel pretty good about this.
Yeah.
But you got to know that potentially, and there's a lot of good running backs in this draft.
Yes.
There's a lot of good, and there's a lot of good wide receivers in this draft. I just think it's so important that Dallas. I'm to the point, and I hate to admit this. I hate that I'm just kind of said it's CD, and I now need to fix the room. I've tried with Tolbert. I've tried. We'll see with Brooks and Flournoy, and we'll see.
Mingo.
I'm not. I'm like we were talking about corner earlier. I'm kind of that way with wide receiver now. I'm kind of at that point where I've got to do better. I've got to do better for my quarterback. I've got to do better for the offense. I've got to do better for Lamb. I've got to do better. And Ted McMillan, taking him, that guy's got some rare traits to him when you watch him catch the football, the routes he runs, the size he has, the way he plays. His game. I mean, you can watch him if you like Hunter at cornerback in Colorado. You can watch 2023 tape, and he destroys Hunter in that game with the way he plays. So there's if man, I really with Daniel Jeremiah's draft when I started seeing 19, 20, 21, I was liking all those players like better than the ones I was liking at the top of the board.
And is he telling us something? He's talking to people around the league. You talking to people around the league.
Yeah, that's where I initially thought. I initially thought with the pick of Nolan, I thought, okay, he's now I do know this because
You did a
Bobby,
great job on that, Bryan, illustrating and getting fans ready. Because when I tell you, Bryan, fans, they went haywire. There's no way. There's no way. And I think you illustrated that well. Like, hey, there's way.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing with Nolan, and like I said, I just wanted to know he saw it as a fit, and rightfully so. If you don't pay Osa Odigizua $20 to $24 million a year, you're going to have to draft a three technique. You're going to have to find one of these guys, and he just thought it was the right fit. It wasn't, oh hey, I talked to the West Coast scout, or I talked to Will McClay, or I talked to. It wasn't that. He just felt like that it was the right fit, but. There are certain things I know Daniel Jeremiah's got some excellent sources, and nobody wants to get their mock draft wrong. So if you got a buddy at Philadelphia, you're going to call him up and say, "Hey, listen, I'm thinking about giving you player X." Yeah, I don't know, man. We're not super high on player X. What about this guy? Was this guy available? Oh yeah, okay. I mean, these guys and gals that do these mock drafts, they want to do them right. They want to, but like this, the ones that matter to me, the first mock draft and the last mock draft. Everything else you try and kind of just create scenarios and stuff like that. But I think Walter Nolan is definitely a consideration for the Dallas Cowboys. And there's, like I say, there's some really some strong, good things that Daniel Jeremiah said, and then there's some things I think you have concerns about.
Ladies and gentlemen, man, Bryan Broaddus, a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for this, Bryan. I'll say this. I want to say this on the Tet thing really quickly, Bryan. With him in Dallas, I think it's one thing that I think people would miss is that he would not have to come in day one and be a one. I think if he goes to the Patriots, which is a landing spot, maybe, well, I would say Las Vegas, but they do have Bowers. But, some of those spots, he would not have to come in and be a one.
Exactly right.
He would just come in and, like, right today, he's better than Jalen Tolbert. Love Jalen Tolbert, but he wins in much better ways than Tolbert. I did a recent content on that. And so he would come in and be a weapon. And what you're saying about upgrading that room, I think it would be instant upgrade. And if you parlayed him, now what you are saying that I think I want fans to kind of horn in on, don't count on getting Henderson at 44. Don't count on getting Caleb Johnson at all those mock drafts. You might want to rip those up.
Just like I say, it could happen. It very well. That's why they're mock drafts. Just always think about the worst possible scenario you can create for yourself.
Yeah.
Take guys off the board and see how comfortable you are picking players, because everybody thinks running back at 44 automatic. Don't be comfortable with that. That thing could get wiped out. That thing could get wiped out before it gets to you at 44. Make yourself have to struggle a little bit. Don't pick the thing that take a guy, take players ahead of it that makes you really uncomfortable. Yeah. And you'll see if you want to stand in there and make a pick, or is there a possibility to go down a little bit, or do you have to move up? But make yourself uncomfortable with these mock drafts and kind of prepare yourself to always think that the worst thing that could happen to you in the draft is about to happen. That's the best way. That's the best way to draft. I mean, I've been in rooms before where we've worked on this, and we're thinking, okay, this guy's going to be there, and he's not. And now you're like, well, wait a minute. For the last 3 months, we talked about that guy being there. Just prepare yourself that it's not going to exactly work out like you think, and then you'll be better off because you'll have other options.
Yeah.
If all your running backs are gone, well, maybe in the third round, well, okay, we're not going to get a running back in the third. Now, the problem with that is you don't have a 4 right now.
Yes.
You don't have a 4. So you're sitting there and you might, if you pass on Chinty, just make it as uncomfortable as possible for you and then determine which way you want to go.
Yeah.
Because that'll tell you a lot about how your board is.
Yeah. Bryan Broaddus, thank you so much, man. I'm going to give you the air handshake.
Hey, I got you the handshake too. Appreciate your Foots, and thank you for all your hard work, man. Enjoy doing stuff with you. I really do.
Man, I'm sure I'll be popping on with the Doing All Right, and I got some people coming on I'll be having Zach on this week and a few other people, try to get them back on. But whenever I can get the Godfather, I'm thankful, man. So much love to you, brother.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
As always. All right, guys. Much love. Any guys? Oh, by the way, I got to do this. You guys make sure you follow Bryan on Twitter. He has amazing takes. Make sure you guys are following and doing all right. He's wearing the 8 hat for Troy Aikman's beard.
Yeah.
We were talking about that pre-show. So, I mean, Bryan, he's all over the place, man, and he is a true Godfather. We thank him. All right. Much love, y'all. Peace.